Alors que je vous représente très rapidement les personnes qui sont avec nous ce soir, à commencer par
And first of all, Cécile Allegra, who co-directed the film. On her right, Meron Estafanos, who we saw in the film. She's the one operating the radio in Sweden. To my right, Maurisse, who's a journalist for Le Monde and who investigated Switzerland and Eritrean money in Switzerland. And to her right, Sheila Keetharuth, who is the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Eritrea. So 4 speakers on stage. And the last guest is Zere, journalist and writer, who is with us from the US. He didn't get the necessary papers to get out of the US. I'd like to ask a first question so that we understand the situation a bit better. The film explained the situation of Eritreans fleeing from Eritrea and going through the horrors we've seen. But Cécile, I'll start with you. You give us figures at the end of the film. What do we know about the number of people fleeing Eritrea and trying to go through the Sinai? First of all, good evening. Thank you for being here tonight. It's always a pleasure for me to be able to discuss and explain what we've seen, especially in the presence of Meron. I'm very happy to have her with us. You probably know that Eritrea is a dictatorship, but it's not recognized as such.
I'm hearing the translation. It's kind of... Anyway.
So we only have approximate ideas. People say that 3,500 people leave Eritrea each month to flee the regime. When we shot the film, the main route was going north, but people don't just jump willfully into the arms of tortioners. They were just fleeing the country to go to a safer place. To start with, the route was going to Israel, and there was no system of torture, and that's where the question lies. How did they go from a smuggler's system to a torture system? Then, around 2009, trafficking started getting out of proportion. So then the Eritreans stopped going towards the Sinai desert, but torturers moved closer and organized a whole system of kidnappings to get the commodity, being human beings, that they were ransoming and torturing. Meron has been following the problem since the beginning. She received a telephone call from the desert from the beginning. So the figure we have of 50,000 is from her data. It's probably still an underestimation, though. We think it might be far more, but nothing is certain because nobody has been able to go there and see mass graves, and actually in the desert traces disappear very quickly. That's why we fight every day to be somehow able to document what is in fact a genocide. Yes, a great number of people try to flee the country.
Abraham, thank you for being
with us
tonight. The question I'd like to ask you first, we've seen that many people from Eritrea are trying to, get out of the country and taking risks by going to the Sinai desert. Why? Why do people want to leave Eritrea?
Yeah, there are many reasons that people want to leave Eritrea. One is definitely the indefinite conscription, that most citizens are trapped. They can't have private life. They can't establish a family. They can't attend schools. Like the only university was closed in 2006, and people joined like the last year of secondary school is taught at the military training center. So even colleges are under military. So the whole country is just like a military. So people will try to establish their life once they leave the country, either in Europe or Middle East or America. That's why they're trying to flee at all costs the country.
Thank you, Abraham. Meron, of course, you can confirm that. Why do people leave? Why do people flee Eritrea? And well, to your knowledge, of course, human rights are being violated, and that's the reason why people flee. But also, the second thing is, are they aware of the risk that they're taking when trying to flee Eritrea?
What's sad is that these people do actually know that there is a shoot-to-kill policy at the border, that there is, chances are 50% that you will make it out of Eritrea without being caught or without being shot at. And then if you're lucky, from that 50%, chances are 50% of them will get kidnapped once they get to Sudan as well. So these people know. And also the woman, what always surprised me is that a woman will get raped at least 3 times from the time she left Eritrea until she reached Europe. So women do actually know that they are going to get raped. So instead of getting pregnant, so they inject themselves so that they don't get pregnant. So that shows you. So to me, that knowing that there are such kind of risks that they want to take these risks, life in Eritrea must be much harsher because you're ready to take all the risk abroad. So most of the people that I speak to, like the Sinai survivors, they always say, when they get kidnapped, they say, I used to listen to your program when I was in Eritrea. I heard your radio station and I knew about the kidnapping, but yet they try.
But at the same time, what strikes me is, of course, they're aware of the risk they're taking for themselves, but for the family as well that stays in Eritrea, it's a big risk, it seems. So everybody's, aware and okay with that?
I mean, it's not about being okay, but it's like when you don't see any kind of hope. Just to give you a small example, in 2014, those people that crossed to Italy, the largest group of unaccompanied minors were from Eritrea. We're talking about larger than even Syrians. Over 4,000 unaccompanied minors, younger than 16. So these kids, when you speak to them, I mean, these kids did not go to military or something, but the reason that they give you is, my father, I don't know him. He's been in the military since before I got born. My older siblings, as soon as they're 16, 17, they're being drafted, conscripted. So the children of Eritrea are very realistic. Already at the age of 8 and 9, 7, they know that they are going to be soldiers, just like their older siblings, their parents. So yeah, what they do is, the first thing that comes to your mind is, it's not like dreaming to be a doctor or a pilot or something. It's just to get out of the country, to become somebody, because you know you're not going to become somebody in the country, sadly.
It sure is. Madame Keetharuth, vous êtes la rapporteure spéciale.
Madame Keetharuth, the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Eritrea. A very thick report has been published fairly recently. What can you say about the situation, human rights situation in Eritrea? Well, first of all, thank you for your invitation. I'm very pleased to be able to be with you tonight. First of all, I must say that I'm here as a special rapporteur, and the report of which you're talking was drafted by the Investigation Commission. I'm not talking on their behalf. But I would still like to say that all that the previous speakers have said is very true indeed. I can confirm that national military service is like forced labor. It's not only the durations, because it's a lifelong service, but there are other human rights violations within the national military service. Hence, many people choose to leave the country. country. But there are other types of violations. For example, the freedom of expression. There are arbitrary arrests, arbitrary detentions, and I'm sure we'll can talk about it later on. Yes, let's talk about it right now, because we need to understand the situation of human rights. That's what we need to absolutely understand. Thank you. I can first of all talk about the rule of law. Eritrea is a country where there is no constitution. There used to be a constitution. It was adopted in 1997, but it's not effective. So legally speaking, there is no protection for human rights. Coming to arrests and arbitrary detention, all the people I've interviewed, all the people I've met were either illegally detained or arrested, or know somebody or relative or friend who was put in prison with no due process, with no justice whatsoever, so that there would be some kind of oversight over a detention, whether it would be arbitrary or not. So there is the issue of detention, there is torture in penitentiary institutions, and for young people, because there is a great number of young people leaving the country, you need to understand that in the last year of secondary school, that last year is spent in a military institution. They must go through this stage before being able to have any further education. Once they go through 11th grade, they have for the 12th grade to go to that special institution where both girls and boys are need to go to get any further education. I could go on and on, but I think it would be a good thing to let other people speak as well. So basically, to sum things up, I'd say that it's the issue of national military service and the lack of rule of law. All decisions are made by a small group of people, a handful of people, meaning there is no constitutional protection for human rights.
Merci. Marie-Maurice, vous avez beaucoup écrit, beaucoup travaillé, rencontré.
Thank you, Maurice. You have been writing a lot. You have been meeting a lot of refugees here. And here in Europe, when we talk about refugees from Eritrea, we say, oh, they are economic refugees. But finally, the situation in Eritrea is not so bad. Maybe it's bad. We don't know. What kind of interview did you have? What answers did you receive from the Eritrean you met? All tell about the same things, about fear. They fled from a country where there was fear, they had no future, they took many risks upon themselves to escape from this country. Many have fled alone. Some of them were kidnapped or had family members kidnapped, and they went through terrible things. as we could see in the film, and they arrived here, and a specificity of these persons, this was my feeling, they have a double sanction. It was bad in their country, they did this terrible trip to come here to have a better life, and here they are not very welcome, and on the top of that, they, in Switzerland, but also in other countries of Europe, they are victims of a form of control, and they are kind of racketed by the Eritrean authorities. They are still being controlled by the regime, even here in Europe. And this is something which is specific to the Eritrean community here in Switzerland. So we'll come to this text.
For you, Ms. Keetharuth just displayed a whole long list of human rights violations before in her speech. Are the people living in Eritrea aware of all those violations? Abraham, do you?
Sorry.
Oh, all right. I'll say it again. I was saying just before Ms. Keetharuth just displayed. Well, she talked about a whole long list of human rights violations in Eritrea, and what I wanted to know is, are people within Eritrea aware of those violations?
Yeah, they're very much aware of the violations, but they don't have other options. They can't resist. They can't oppose. They don't have any other means of like showing their resentment. There's no any independent press. There's no association of there are no independent political parties. There are no independent civil societies. So even if they are aware of the situations, they don't have any means of raising the power. So what they have is just to say, like, they either have to flee the country at the cost of theirs, at the cost of risking their lives, or they have to stay and being tortured by the regime.
Meron, tell us, what is life like in Eritrea?
It's difficult to, like, families produce their children just for the state. Like, children leave their house at the age of 16 to join the military school or to join the higher secondary school, and then through the higher secondary, the last year of secondary school education, they either go to the military which is indefinite, and they will end their lives there, or even if they join the colleges, which are substandard colleges, they don't even have their choice to. They don't have choices to attend their whatever field they want to study, and even if they finish after in the college, they will also be assigned to different ministries or the military, and they don't have a monthly salary, or if they have minimum salary, they can't live on those salaries. So they have very, it's literally difficult, like, it's very confined life, and it's literally isolated from the whole international community.
Meron, do you want
So
to answer?
I would say literally, a big prison.
No, that's all right, Abraham. Thank you very much. No problem. But Meron will add something now. Thank you.
Well, it's a beautiful country, beautiful people, beautiful culture. You get surprised when a lot of Europeans do go there. They see how nice people are. Everybody's friendly, wants to invite them at home and things, and that misleads them. And they say, everybody was happy. Everybody wanted to talk to me. But when it comes to the actual point, if you are going to discuss human rights issues or anything, everybody's afraid. Everybody will run away from you. Lots of mistrust in every house, where you cannot even trust your own brother, because there's such kind of rumors going on that the government spreads a rumor of fear, how there is an informant in every house, and people do actually believe it. And they cannot even trust their own brother or sister. Like, everybody's unhappy with the system. But when there's a mistrust, it makes it that you cannot organize yourself because you don't know if your brother is an informant, your best friend could be an informant. You don't know who's informant, who isn't. So everybody accuses everybody of being an informant, so that makes it a bit difficult where, you know, life becomes hard because you cannot even trust part of your family members. And then you see, you know, it's just, I actually moved to Eritrea and lived there for 2 years. I grew up in Sweden, growing up in a democratic country, and then moving to Eritrea thinking I had no idea how the country was when I moved, actually. And then when I went there, it was just small things kind of woke me up, you know. I remember the day that I actually woke up was our neighbor, my childhood teacher, got arrested late at night. You know, they came to our neighborhood, and around 2 in the morning, about 50 soldiers came to arrest one man. And I got curious, and I said, why are they arresting him? And what was shocking was nobody asked why he was arrested. Everybody was mad at me for asking, so everybody kept telling me, stop asking, he must have done something. I said, well, isn't he going to be charged or whatever? So I kept asking for about a month. And every person in our neighborhood that I asked was telling me to be quiet. Do not ask questions like that. You can be in trouble. That was a bit scary, and that kind of, and then military police everywhere, you know, asking you for an ID that there is no freedom of movement. You have to show permission paper everywhere. And that kind of also got me, because me holding a Swedish citizenship, I had all kind of freedoms, while the people that have Sweden and were slaves to the regime did not have freedom of movement. So that was the reason that woke me up as well. So very sad, you know, like there's a shortage of water, no electricity, you know, even to get bread, it's like you have to use a coupon. And if your son leaves to Sudan or something, the family will get punished. So they will take away the coupon that you normally get, you know, like for the family, you know, 5 bread a day, then they will cut it into 2 breads or 3 breads a day. So it's like everything you see is, you get amazed on how these people actually live. There is no words that I can describe how life inside Eritrea is, to be honest.
Thank you. Cécile?
Oups. Oui. Et c'est d'ailleurs la raison pour laquelle
And that's the reason why
pourquoi ce que vous venez
you
de voir dans le
understand
film, dans Voyage en Barbarie, peut-être que
you understand what you see in a film.
Mais maintenant, vous faites pas, parce que
And that's the first time that you discover something like that, because there is this culture of paranoia which is taught to the Eritreans from the childhood on, and the torturers are kind of relying on this atmosphere, and they are able to make them fear even if they are freed. Now we come into this historical phase. You belong to the people who know, and now this is a phenomenon which has to be recognized. It's not just a little trip to some faraway country. It's not one bad experience of migration. It's a system, an organized system of torture, of concentration camps, which is done by little groups who have the powers, like little jihadist groups. It's not a small phenomena, marginal phenomena, several hundred of Eritreans who flee from their country because it's a dictatorship. It's a massive phenomena which is spreading across the whole Horn of Africa, and except for some activists and reporters or people like Meron who speak up and try to denounce what is happening. If we do not anything, you are going to transform the other side of the Mediterranean as an antechamber of torture, because the average time of traveling of these people who come from Eritrea is about 3 to 4 years. You have people who have been sent to Sinai, have been tortured, sent back to Eritrea, escaped again, and escaped to the torture of ISIL. So it's really a market of torture camps. It's a very lucrative market because you have about 100 torture camps in Libya, in Sudan, and in Yemen. It's not a very small phenomena. You have thousands of people who go across these channels. There is nobody on these boats coming through the Mediterranean who haven't been tortured, badly tortured in the country where they come from. So we have to think about that when we welcome people who from these countries, and they are like survivors of camps. It reminds us another story, another history. I didn't think that at my age, I'm 40, I would again see people coming back from camps. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm strong in my words, but we cannot go on ignoring that these are concentration camps. Maybe you will be shocked by my words. You don't need to have an order saying you have to exterminate everybody. The new ideology is muddy. It's to get out as much money as possible out of the people. And that's enough as an ideology. Thank you, Cécile.
Tout va bien. On va revenir plus à l'Érythrée.
Yeah, we'll come back to Eritrea, even though we perfectly understand that the two things are linked. Madame Keetharuth, coming back to what was said, I lost a bit my track listening to Cécile just now, but I've gone blank. Yes, please.
I would like to pick up from where Meron left and from where Cécile also left. Just to say that, yes, I haven't been to Eritrea because I'm not invited in my capacity as Special Rapporteur. I haven't had the opportunity to go, but I do listen to different people and different voices. And I do hear, to a large extent, many times, Asmara is a beautiful city, I'd love to go, but I haven't been. The people, just as Meron is saying, are lovely. We don't find that there is this fear on the streets. People are able to walk. You walk in Asmara, the place is nice, etc. And we can move around, but we don't have this feeling. My issue here is very simple. It depends what you do when you go to the city and when you're there. If you have a human rights lens, which I have, and if I put, which is the angle from which I'll be putting questions, that is, if somebody is arrested, do we know, has he been taken to a court? Did he get, was he given whatever his rights is? Does his family know that he has been arrested? Can they visit him? One. Secondly, do children who've been expressing to a large extent that they do not want to be rounded up in what they call the gifas, that is a roundup where lots of children or different people are taken for the military service, do they have the choice not to do that, not to go? Many have told me that they, with regards to the national service, they're very happy to do it for 18 months. And it is only the context of the illimited, aspect of it. You get in, you don't know when you get out, which bothers people. That's the second. And then another aspect I'll be looking at really more putting, 100,000 questions around human rights issues. And I may get 500 answers, but at the same time, others, you know, the others who go and find that, yes, it is a nice city, it's the veneer, it's the surface, probably one would need to ask a little bit more questions with regards to human rights issues.
But what you're talking about is important. En réalité, vous avez à moitié répondu à la question que je ne vous ai pas posée. Donc
You sort of
c'est
half replied to the question I
on parlait
wasn't
du climat de
going to
suspicion,
ask
du climat
you.
de peur, du
You've been
climat,
talking
voilà, où
about a
chacun
climate
s'épie.
of
Alors ça, c'est la
fear and
partie
of
sur place
suspicion
dans le
where
pays. Et puis, en même
everyone
temps, pour les
seems to
organisations
be spying on
internationales,
others.
pour le CICR,
But for
pour
the
tout le
UN,
monde,
for the
c'est impossible
HCR,
d'aller
for
sur
other
place pour
organizations,
constater, pour
it's
rencontrer.
impossible to actually get there to investigate, to see with their own eyes.
Non, je vais parler anglais, excusez-moi. I would say that there are other people who have been able to do. I haven't been able to go there in my capacity as Special Rapporteur. But just to say that there are other people who've got a different way of looking at things, and there are different things that they want to look at. It's probably not a very specific human rights issue. However, what I would say is recently there has been reports that some human rights people have had access to a prison after a very long time.
It wasn't the case. The ICRC, for example, is
No,
not allowed to go to prison, I think.
No, that's the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights who were able to access one specific prison. However, my point is this. Do we have a proper monitoring of what goes on in institutions of that kind? Is it a broader access that we are looking at? Do others, like ICRC or others who have a very specific mandate of monitoring prison circumstances and situation, would they have access? Would they have access not only to that one specific prison, but would it be to all the prisons on the territory? So I don't have answers for you, because just like you, I'm also putting questions, and this is what we would want to see more. Better and stronger answers from those in power, from the authorities for human rights. Answers which reply to human rights issues, which I link very specifically to the number of those crossing the borders.
Can I just add one
Yeah,
little
please,
thing?
go ahead.
The prison that she just mentioned, actually, that's the only prison in Eritrea, in Asmara, that was built by Norwegians. I have to state that it have a shower system and everything. It's like more of an European prison kind of. It's a prison for the privileged. It's not like no Eritrean that I know go there.
It's a model prison.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the only prison that they were able to visit. So it's. The whole visit is a sham for me, to be honest, because had they visited Era, where we have prisoners of conscience that have been in prison for over 15 years or whatever, then I would have said Eritrea is opening up. But the only prison that they were allowed to visit is the only nice prison that we have in Eritrea. So.
Marie-Maurice, je reviens vers vous.
Okay. Can I just add a little point to Sheila's comment?
Yeah, go ahead. I had a question for you, but go ahead.
All right. Now, I was about to say, like, as Meron said, there are about 360 prisons, underground prisons in the country now. So this time, they just showed, as Meron was saying, they just showed one prison, which is like, for them to be like best hotel. But it's difficult to even to understand the context of prison for the others. Like, and Sheila was saying, people were not allowed to respond. You know, there is fear that any Eritrean can't even talk to a foreigner. Like, if you are straight, like with a foreigner, you're immediately at the eyes of in the eyes of the security, the state security. So people will not feel comfortable to talk to any foreigner, let alone express their frustrations with the system.
Thank you, Abraham.
So it's the whole kind of fear system imposed in the citizens.
Marie-Maurice, d'après vous, est-ce qu'il y a moyen d'agir, de mettre la
Manon,
pression
do you believe
sur
there
le
is a
gouvernement
way to put
érythréen?
pressure on the Eritrean government?
Ici, ça marche? Oui. En fait, on pourrait croire que
You need to explain one thing. One might believe that the regime is self-centered and completely
En fait, il a étendu ses tentacules dans
closed,
le
but
monde
it's
entier,
very different. On the
d'une
contrary,
manière
they've
très
got
fine et
a very subtle,
intelligente,
very
si on
discreet
peut dire,
network around the
c'est
world.
que,
They were
le
very
régime
clever.
du dictateur et de ses généraux
The
proches
regime
ont
of
des
the
activités
dictator
commerciales et
and his
bancaires, dans de
close
nombreux pays, que leur
generals
base,
have got
financière, c'est
banking
Dubaï.
links
Ils ont aussi un
in
certain
many
nombre de comptes
countries,
très bien remplis
especially
en
in
Suisse.
Dubai. They've got a very
Ça rend les choses un peu compliquées
interesting
parce
number of
que,
bank accounts in Switzerland as
l'argent est
well.
placé,
And it makes it
évidemment,
very
pas
complicated
directement
because
au
the
nom
money
d'Afewerki,
is,
mais
of
au
course,
nom de ses
not
proches, parfois
under
au nom de
Afewerki's
personnes,
name, but under
de
the
son
name
clan
of
qui sont actives
people
pour
from his
lui,
clan,
dans
people
différents
who
pays. Vous l'avez
act on
mentionné
his
aussi
behalf
dans votre
in
travail.
different
Et donc,
countries.
du coup, on a un régime
So what
dictatorial
happens
qui est
is that
plutôt
we have a
riche, qui ponctionne
dictatorship
l'argent
that
d'à
is
peu près
quite
toutes les
rich
activités
and is
industrielles et
taking money
commerciales du
from
pays et financières,
all
et qui le met dans
industrial
des comptes
economic
bancaires placés à
activity
l'étranger.
in the
Et
country
est-ce que
and
ces
puts the
comptes ont
money
été gelés? Est-ce qu'il y a
abroad
des enquêtes
in
sur cet
bank
argent?
accounts.
Pas du tout,
Has the money
puisqu'officiellement le
been
régime érythréen n'est pas
stopped?
accusé
Has
de
it
quoi que
been
ce soit. Enfin, il y a des
investigated?
enquêtes
Not at all,
qui
because
défendent
there are
le
no
problème, comme on l'a montré.
accusations
En
at
tout
the
cas, il est
moment
officiellement pas
against the regime, at least officially.
condamné par la
They
communauté
have not
internationale.
been
Il y a aucun
condemned
gel
by
des
the
avoirs.
international
Il n'y a pas de
community.
plainte
There is no
officielle. Donc, du coup, il se passe à peu près
freezing
rien.
of their
Et
money,
c'est
so
même
basically
pire
nothing
parce
is
que
happening.
les réseaux criminels
It's even worse,
liés à
really,
l'Érythrée,
because all the criminal networks
qui
linked to
récoltent cet
Eritrea,
argent,
people who collect the money
pour le compte du gouvernement,
for
donc de l'État, du
the
régime,
government, for the
ont
regime,
des personnes dans chaque pays. Donc on
have
pourrait,
people
en théorie,
in
comme
all
ça a été le
countries.
cas du coup en Suède avec cet
So,
exemple, arrêter des
in
intermédiaires
theory, you could very well
qui
arrest
facilitent ces
middlemen,
trafics, qui
just like we
récoltent
saw in
l'argent.
the
Pour
film,
l'instant,
people who
il y a eu
take
cette
the money,
arrestation en Suède et
receive
aucune
the money.
autre
There was one
ailleurs,
arrest,
alors
just
que,
one in
le fort
Sweden,
juridique, comme on dit,
but
c'est-à-dire
nowhere
le
else.
lieu où le crime se passe, peut être parfois chez nous, mais
Where,
il n'y a eu strictement aucune
in spite of the
arrestation.
fact that
À ma
some of the
connaissance, en tout cas, en Suisse,
crime is committed in
il y a eu
Western
quelques
countries.
recherches qui ont été
As far
faites,
as
mais
I
aucune
know,
enquête
some
officiellement
investigation
n'est
has
ouverte
been
sur
made
ces
in
questions.
Switzerland, but there
Donc,
is no
je pense
official
que c'est compliqué
inquiry
de
open.
lutter contre ce régime
It's quite difficult to fight a regime that is structured as a network, a very clever network, as long as the international community has not officially banned this dictatorship. Yes, and I'd like to add something else.
J'essaye toujours de vous passer le relais, que chacun d'entre vous soit conscient.
It's very important for each of us to be aware. There are lots of Eritreans in Switzerland. They could go and put a claim before the police. When we tried to do that in Switzerland, police officers say it's none of their business. What we are trying to do is, in France, to have measure adopted so that people from Eritrea could take complaints from people who have been racketed, from people who have been under torture. And once you have these claims, you group them, and then you might hope to start building a case maybe for crimes against humanity, which is the case for these torture camps and deportation. Everything matters. This is the kind of thing that we can do. You can go along with somebody, an Eritrean, you know, so that they can put a claim at the police station. You could also support militants, activists, Meron. She's got an NGO, they need money, you can help them so that she can keep helping these people. She receives calls 24 hours a day from people in the middle of the desert. Nobody else can give that kind of support. As you saw in the movie, there are very few people who can understand, who know where these people are calling from, where they are stationed, what you should do, have people manage to escape. Meron knows all of this. It's very important, and that also helps some of them get out. I've got a strong message on this. You need to raise awareness, showing this film in your schools, in your workplace. Invite people to explain what is happening. If you can accompany somebody you know who might need your help, even if it's to go and put a complaint to the police. Meron has been trying to get some middlemen arrested, so that's a starting point. Denounce what is happening here in our countries. Let's not forget that every time a ransom is paid, money comes from the US, money comes from here, and it's bad for the communities. It disintegrates communities, the paying of ransoms. Now we've got proofs that some members of the high-level military have direct links with tortioners. They sell them along. It's an incredible, insidious way to get money into the country, into the regime pockets. So instead of letting these people go and be sold to someone else, they sell them themselves and get the money. Isn't that cynical? It's frightening to think that a repressive regime has in fact managed to have a double system of repression, and inside the country and outside. It's absolutely incredible. It's the most abject thing, most abject globalization. Some people manage to make people pay because they just go through their territory, and other people make the most of it and get the money.
This is the way of acting here in Europe, as in Eritrea.
What's going to happen? I mean, there was like a semi-military coup some time ago where a small portion of the army tried to do something. What's going to happen there? What can people within Eritrea maybe do to free themselves?
I'm a very optimistic person, by the way.
I'm sure you are. You wouldn't be here.
There are moments where you feel hopeless. You feel that things are not changing. But at the same time, I see lots of change just in the last 5 years. 6 years ago, for example, it was impossible to even think to call to Eritrea and ask about the situation in Eritrea. But right now, working in Radio Arena, it's so shocking that I receive 25 to 35 phone calls a week from the people inside Eritrea, people that I don't know, people that just want to give you information of what's happening, people to encourage you, to give feedback about the programs that we have. So I see more and more people are daring. They need to organize themselves. It will take, but we see small baby steps like the one you mentioned when they control the Ministry of Information. We see high-level people defecting a lot. That's also a sign when the regime is falling. I see everybody's talking loud right now, even on the phone. Before, I remember, we used to use codes in order to receive information, but now it's just pure that people have started to break the fear, and they start understanding that it's only that rumors spread by the government, because let alone Eritrea to control every phone, even Switzerland cannot do that. It's just impossible. But they have managed to make the people believe that's how the country is ruled. Forget about Eritrea, let's talk about Europe. Everybody's I remember whenever we had demonstrations, when we protested against the government, if we had 50 people, that was massive. We would say, wow, we had 50 people. But now, in Geneva last year, close to 6,000 people went out to to support the Commission of Inquiry. So things are changing, even outside or even inside. So I believe sooner or later, I mean, even the biggest dynasties have fallen and this regime is going to fall. How is another question. But I do believe at the same time the Eritrean people have suffered enough. We have fought once for our independence, for our freedom, and I believe that we will do that again. So that's the reason that actually I keep fighting, because I believe that that day is going to come.
Thank you.
If I
Abraham,
may,
yes.
just before we go to
Abraham, but
Abraham.
we're gonna listen to Mrs. Keetharuth first.
Yes, I'd like to say that I haven't investigated the trafficking and other issues. My mandate is specifically about the issue of human rights in Eritrea. And my role as a special rapporteur is to tell the government and the international community where there are gaps in terms of obligations that Eritrea has taken with regards to its obligations under treaties which which deal with human rights issues. And this is where I think we need, as far as my mandate is concerned, is to concentrate the efforts. Is there rule of law? What are the characteristics? Is there, what are you doing to improve the situation in terms of that specific aspect? Is the national service forced labor or not, according to the obligations you have taken? And if not, when are you going to change the situation on the ground that is making it to 18 months? Do you have in place the necessary mechanism to ensure that people can access justice? Because I think this is where the biggest aspect needs to be, the lens need to be very strongly put. What are the rights, what is the rights environment inside? And how do we improve that particular environment with regards to how do we ensure that people are able to enjoy their human rights and not always have to feel that they are obligated through the national service, because people have rights also, not only duties in terms of the broader scheme of things. So I would like to stop here for now, but I absolutely wanted to make sure that, it's not, while all the other aspects which has been discussed are important, it's the here and now that, in terms of how to improve the situation in terms of rights, which is important. Thank you.
Marie-Maurice, vous pensez que l'amélioration des droits sur
You
place est quelque
think the
chose qui est
improvement of the
réaliste
human
sans qu'il y ait une
rights
pression,
inside of the
internationale,
country is
autre
something
que simplement,
possible
on va dire, par des
without
recommandations?
a pressure of the international community?
De ce que j'ai cru comprendre, parce que moi non plus,
From
j'ai pas
what
encore eu
I
la chance d'aller sur
understood,
place,
and I
il y a un développement
hadn't a
économique de
chance
l'Érythrée
to
assez
go
fort,
to this
notamment
country.
au
There
niveau
is a very
minier.
strong economic
Ce sont des groupes
development of the
miniers
country.
internationaux, notamment
Mining
canadiens et
industry
australiens,
is
qui sont en train de
quite
se
strong. You
s'implanter
have
sur place.
international groups, Canadian
Ils
and
ont
Australian
été
groups who
sélectionnés et
are
autorisés par le régime
have been
à créer
authorized
ces
by the
activités.
regime to
En
create some
échange de quoi?
activities.
Ça reste une question.
But we don't know what
Ça
they
pourrait
get
aider
for
au
that
développement économique du
authorization.
pays. D'un autre côté,
It
il y a
could
déjà
help to the
énormément de plaintes sur les
economic development of the
conditions de
country,
travail
but there
dans
are
ces
lots
mines
of
sur place.
complaints about the
Bon,
working
par ailleurs, il y
condition
a
on these
des aides assez
mines
conséquentes de l'Union
in the
européenne
country. There
à
are
l'égard de l'Érythrée qui
also
ont été
subsidies
données
from
et redonnées,
EU,
des
which have
centaines de
been
milliers d'euros
given
qui
to
sont allés en direction du
Eritrea,
pays dans le but
hundreds and
d'améliorer
thousands
les
of
conditions
euros
sur place
in
dans le
order
but
to improve the living
d'éviter
condition in
ces
the country,
migrations
in order to prevent those
douloureuses. Mais là
migrations.
encore, quel système de contrôle a été mis en
But
place pour s'assurer
we
que cet
don't know
argent
which monitoring
va à la
system has been
population
put
et
into
non pas au
place
régime?
in
La
order
question reste
to
posée. Donc
assure
moi,
that
je suis
the
un
money
tout
is
petit peu moins
distributed to the
optimiste que
population
Meron
and not to
à
the
ce
system.
stade.
So
Mais
I'm not
je
that
pense qu'on peut
optimistic
travailler
as
sur différents aspects,
Meron, but I
l'aspect
think we
économique,
can
l'aspect
work
de
on
l'homme,
different
l'aspect
aspects,
politique.
the economical
Quant à
aspect,
la
the human
communauté
rights aspect,
internationale, je pense
and the
qu'il faudrait
political
qu'elle se
aspect. And
mobilise
I
à un
think
moment
that the
donné pour
international community should mobilize just to stop, to put an end to all that.
I want to see if the public has a few questions. How do you, yes, no, you don't interfere. I was asking you, actually, how do you see the future of Eritrea? Do you see a solution coming from the inside, or is the international community that might help or bring a solution from the outside?
I would expect two ways. Like, I don't expect the regime to change now. There's no way they will improve the situation of the country, or improve the human rights situation in the country. They are beyond repair, and they have reached their last gasp. I'm hoping some change would come from inside, and the international community also needs to put pressure on the government. Like, the European Union is supporting them. Like, they are just giving them more time to dehumanize the country, to put pressure on the citizens. So I would say the change should come from inside, but the international community also needs to cooperate with those who want for real change, for those who are working for change. Not just help the regime in power, not help the ICS regime and give them some handouts to sustain power, but just help them for real change.
Thank you, Abraham. Je me tourne maintenant vers vous qui avez suivi ce film, qui avez écouté bien cette discussion
Now
depuis.
you have been watching this film and listening to this discussion. I want to open the floor. Maybe you have some question you would like to ask. So when you ask your question, please introduce yourself and then also say to whom you want to ask the question. My name is Aurel Parisien. I have a question for the filmmaker. Something which is not clear for me in your film. In the film, you have the impression that these people come from Sinai who do this kidnapping in order to earn money. But after the film, you said that those kidnapping are organized by the regime itself in order to get money into the country from outside. What I understood through the film is that the money would go out of the country because the people were kidnapped and the families in the country were asked to send money. So I understood. I'm trying to be more clear. The first thing to be said is that in a documentary film, you have to make choices. You cannot say everything. You are well aware of that. So it's a film where for the first time you have people who have the political bravery to show their faces and to speak up. And every time we show this film, other young people want to speak up. This is the first thing I wanted to say. The system of kidnapping and deportation is a very complicated one. You have people who are carrying it out. In Sinai, you have everywhere freelance torture in the Horn of Africa. But at the beginning, they were the first to try to do that because they were on the road of the migrants and they had people who dealing with the logistics, who were dealing with the kidnapping. They would deport the people to some big warehouses where the people were kind of selected or separated. It's a place in other places. They were brought to other places where they were sold, and it's a huge system which is not only based on the will of the Bedouins to make a living. So there is one question which has no answer. Who gave them this idea to become tortioners? What is the part played by the regime? Was it an opportunistic choice? There was this deportation system and they just grabbed this opportunity to earn money. So we don't know exactly how the responsibilities are spread because there was no international investigation, and this is on 4 countries, and it's very complicated on a diplomatic area. You have Eritrea, which is a dictatorship, which is not recognized as such. You have Sudan, you have an international warrant against Bashir, the president. Sudan is also really a very important part of this trafficking system. It's all the place where the people are kidnapped and they are stocked in a way, stockpiled in a way. And then you have Egypt with a military regime, and nobody says that it's a military regime because we are selling them planes, war planes, and because there is a war in Sinai. It's a front line against Islamic State, and this is something the media do not speak about. You have 2,500 soldiers from the Egyptian army who are stationed and working in the Sinai, and then you have a plane which just crashed, and then you have Libya, where you have ISIL becoming stronger and stronger, and this is something Meron just confirmed. They start to buy the migrants in order to have them to enroll them in the Islamic army. So you have all these different grades. Certain people are dealing with trafficking. You have different kind of torture camps. You have small camps where you are being tortured in certain places in Sudan, in Libya, telling you, okay, we torture you a little bit, we don't ask too much money from you. If you pay now, you are not going to be sent in the big camps where you really will be tortured and you will have to give lot of money. Or we torture you a little bit, but you are not going to come into the hands of the Islamic State where you will go through much worse. So it's Keetharuth and Sheila. So, and we are only at the beginning. And the fact that we turn a blind eye on that is worsening the whole thing. So it's very difficult to answer to the question. So she was the only person who really studied the system in detail, Meron. I don't want to repeat myself, but among us working on this topic, the only hero is Meron, because she understood the system.
Well, it's very complicated, to be honest. One thing I can say is I can never say there's proof as far as my research concerned. I'm talking about myself right now. I cannot implicate the Eritrean government into the trafficking or into the torture, but there are questions that are unanswered, but that leads towards that, which is, for instance, when the kidnapping of Eritreans started. First of all, the smugglers that takes you out of Eritrea into Sudan, these are Eritreans that live in Eritrea, and many families have reported these people, who they were, that they were sold and everything. So that smuggler would claim, well, you know, an accident happened. Okay, the first time you can believe him. But if this happens 20, 30 times, and that person is not arrested in Eritrea, even though he's been reported by hundreds of Eritreans, then it makes you believe that that person must be related to some high-rank official, or himself is a high-rank official. And then another thing is, as we were speaking about Eritrea, all of us, we were talking about how secretive it is, how the government knows everything. So people were paying in cash in a broad daylight. We're talking about stock full of cashes, like with big garbage bags. People were going and paying at noon in Asmara. So where were the government? The government that knows everything, what's happening, how money is moving and everything. So that makes you also question, because most of the money that were paid up to 2013 was paid inside Eritrea. We have many proof of that. And some family claim they actually recognize the person that they paid, and these people were high-rank officials. And also another thing that we have to consider is that there is a sanction against Eritrea, and the UN monitoring group on Eritrea and Somalia actually mentioned some high-rank officials. A general was mentioned in the report of being part of the smuggling people. So we know that the officials are involved in smuggling. How it is related to the Sinai, I don't know. But I know that these people, if I want my brother to leave Eritrea in a safe way, I would never pay for my brother to a smuggler. I will pay a high-rank official. It will cost me $6,000, $7,000, but I know he will arrive to Sudan safely. So these people, we know that till today they are smuggling people out of the Eritrea. The whole system is corrupted, the officials are corrupted, and the government of Eritrea has been keeping a blind eye as long as they are not a threat to the power of the government. So they've been like free to do whatever they want to. And then, so if the Bedouins in Sinai, the person is kidnapped in Sinai, being tortured, $30,000 is not an easy money, is being paid in Eritrea. That also makes you question a lot of things.
Thank you, Meron. Une autre question? Où sont les micros?
Merci. Bonsoir à tous.
Good evening. My name is Zere.
Une secundos, donc une Érythréenne de deuxième génération.
I'm a second generation Eritrean. I want to ask both Abraham and Meron
about the international implication in the future of Eritrea and how the European Union gave recently allowed money to the Eritrean government. We talked a lot about if the future would be positive or negative, and my question would be that what do you think the role of the diaspora could be in the transition of the Eritrean government from this dictatorship that is in terms of human rights and of the military service. Désolée, je suis nerveuse.
Pas de souci, allez-y tranquillement, il n'y a pas de souci.
I was wondering what the role of the diaspora is, since we've been paying a 2% tax for decades, and we are the one keeping a blind eye on the international community who is doing nothing, and the European Union paying money to this dictatorship, and also Swiss parliamentarians, des parlementaires suisses, going there and coming back and saying there's no issue there. So what would be the role of this diaspora of tons and tons of Eritreans living out there? Like, this is a question I'm really wondering every single day. I sometimes listen to Radio Arena, and my Tigrinya is really poor, so I really don't know. I'm helpless and hopeless about the situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we start with Abraham, maybe?
Okay. All right. I'll start. I think the immediate action should be just to stop paying for the government and to stop helping the Asmara region. Because it's usually through the Eritrean diaspora, and through them, this has been reflected in the European Parliament as well, because they are portraying the country as if it's progressing, and this has been sending negative message for the, let's say, European Parliament, because they are still helping the government in the country, because they are saying things are being improving. So I would say the first step should be just stop helping the Eritrean government, stop paying the 2% tax, and as much as possible, try to spread the news to your area. Like, tell the parliaments in European Union about the real situation instead of being complicit of the regime. Because if you just keep paying, let's say, if you keep paying the ransom, it will just keep the cycle and continue the suffering, I guess.
Thank you, Abraham. Meron?
I know that feeling, the hopelessness. I actually relate with you. That's how I felt when I first started dealing with the Sinai issue. I contacted every organization. I wrote emails. At first, I was just thinking it's because the international community does not know. That's why it's happening. So I thought, if I just let them know and email them, then within 3 weeks something will change. But then reality was not like that. So at last, I was actually forced into, I start paying ransoms, which because the feeling of hopelessness, even though I know it's wrong to pay ransom, then that was the only option that I was left with. So, I mean, to me, as a diaspora, we have to organize ourselves. There's so many things that we can do. We can lobby international communities. And another thing, I mean, a lot of people are discussing, how Europe is, just because they give money, it's not that because Europeans do not know the human rights situation in Eritrea. For that reason, that's why they're giving 98% Eritreans receive asylum in Europe. So let's just strike that out. What Europe is telling us, we don't care what happens in Eritrea. Keep them in Eritrea, kill them, torture them, do whatever you want. Just don't let them leave the country. Don't let them come to our countries. Don't let them die in our sea. Don't let them die in our land. So that's the kind of message that they are sending. It's not that they don't know. I don't believe that Europeans believe Eritrea is opening up, because things are getting worse and worse for each day for each year that passes. So it's not about things being better. The government of Eritrea, as Abraham stated earlier, cannot change. They can never be better. It's way too late for that. It's not a government that can improve or implement a constitution suddenly or release prisoners suddenly. Too many people have died already. It's just way too late for that. So what we need to do is organize ourselves and do something. So I'm more than happy to meet you. If you're not part of any group in Swiss, I'm more than happy to introduce you. There are many, I'm sure you know them. So just keep doing whatever it is that you can in your capacity.
Thank you, Meron. Une autre question éventuellement?
Another question maybe in the room? You each must understand that we can, each of us, do something.
Oui, le micro va être ouvert quand vous parlez.
Good evening, my name is Catherine Marty. I'm a Swiss citizen, and I want to put a question to the journalists. First of all, let me congratulate the filmmakers. I think you have been very brave, especially to go into the Sinai with all that has been happening there over the years. I think you are also very pragmatic. And coming back on what you said, I mean, you can't watch a film like this and just go quietly to bed in the evening. I knew about kidnappings in Sudan, but I didn't know about the link between Switzerland and Eritrea. Of course, we know that all sorts of dirty money ends up in Swiss banks. But you explained what was happening with mining companies from Canada and Australia setting up business in Eritrea. What are the links between Switzerland and Eritrea? Is there anything that we can do as Swiss citizens?
Merci d'être aussi avec nous, mais je salue le courage des femmes à quelques jours de la journée des femmes, parce que c'est vrai que
I want to say that I'm very happy that there are so many women up there on the stage. So what are the links between Switzerland and Eritrea? Is there any way we as citizens can do something?
Maurice.
Maybe just like the Bonn Declaration group is doing. Answer. Of course, there are no official links as such. It's a delicate question. I've published an article in L'Hebdo, and I will publish others. First link is a banking relationship. There are bank accounts belonging to the regime in Switzerland, in Zurich, and at UBS Bank. As a citizen, you can't do anything about closing down those bank accounts. You would need to have an official procedure, and that is in the hands of the authorities. I don't believe there are very strong business relationships between Switzerland and Eritrea. Switzerland is not directly involved in the dictatorship business. The financial side side of Switzerland is more close to the regime. However, there are lots of middlemen here in Switzerland, people based in Switzerland, who take the money either from the tax or from the kidnappings and then transfer it to traffickers on site. So they belong to this mafia-like network. There are also people who actually coordinate human trafficking and human smugglers. This has been well documented by the United Nations. And these people are in Switzerland, so I believe Swiss authorities should open an investigation on these people. Maybe we can call for the opening of an investigation on that. And one last thing you can do here in Switzerland, as was explained, push people to file a claim. I have myself met with people who have given money to pay a ransom for a relative who had been kidnapped, and these people didn't file a complaint for many reasons because they are afraid. And I think that we as citizens can try to help them and give them the confidence necessary to file a complaint. The more complaints we are getting, then the authorities will have to face the facts.
Merci, Marie. On approche gentiment du terme. On reprend peut-être encore une ou deux questions maximum.
Thank you. We are going to, Marie, we are going to wrap up. I think in the back of the room, some people want to ask questions. So first in front and then in the back of the room. And then we'll wrap up. I would like to ask a short question on specific points. The more you speak of big analyses, the less I understand the situation. Would you introduce yourself? I'm Boris Engelson. I am an independent journalist. What is the motivation of the repentant? Why does he accept to be interviewed? He seems to be eager to be interviewed. It's a very good question. We have been twice in Sinai, and we met not only one torturer, we met not one torturer, but two torturers. The first one didn't give us enough convincing elements, and we met him in a very complicated situation. There was bombings, and we were under a tree. It was not so sure as an environment. So we wanted to come back to be sure to have a very good testimony, a testimony which would not be given out of interest because he would have become, we would have get money. Of course, we didn't pay him, but it's against our conviction. But you have to understand that we were there when the bombing was quite strong and the traffic was decreasing, so the traffickers were out of jobs, were jobless, and so we decided to put the message that we try to understand why this did happen specifically in Sinai and why now. And so they understood that it was an opportunity to speak about Sinai, saying that the Bedouins are second-rate citizens, that they are all without future. So, and when we met this guy, we had to change 5 times the car. It was a very complicated trip in order to avoid the checkpoints. The situation was quite tense. It was close to dawn and we did very precise information. We were quite nervous, and he started to tell us quietly, yes, I am a torturer who is well known, and we started to tell him, we don't believe you. We don't believe you. It's not precise enough what you are saying. So it's not the fact that we were so direct to him. He was a bit angry, and then he said, no, I want to give you some details, and he started to give us geographical details which were compared by Meron, with whom we had been talking before, and that's why we decided that his testimony was valid. So I would have to ask another question. The next question I will ask them next week. So the Ethiopian selling their nephews is something which is spread? Widespread? Yes, Alifam has been sold by his uncle. I don't know if it's something which you can see. Because I have a lot of uncles. I don't know if I have to go on see them, because maybe they might to do the same with me. Meron, would you like to add something to my answer?
Yeah, about the traffickers. That was a very good question. I have been to Sinai a year before Cécile and Delphine went, and I did meet with the traffickers actually, but they were not willing to be interviewed. So we did speak off the record, because to me I had a lot of anger. There were so many things that I would like to know. Like, I asked one of the traffickers when I said, how could you do this to another human being like you? And his answer was, but these are not human beings. To us, they are like cattle. They don't see them. Animals.
Du bétail, comme du bétail.
So to us, we see them like animals. These are Africans. That was his answer. And when I said, but okay, let's say they are animals, but even animals, you don't torture them. And he had nothing to say. Another thing that I would like to say is, I also, when I spoke with them, I mean, they are very sadistic. I didn't see any kind of remorse. One of the ex-traffickers that I met is somebody that I've been following since 2011. And when I met him, so he was more curious to know what I know. It's like to get information from me. And he said, now I don't do that anymore. I quit. I'm a religious person. Yes, he did quit because he had a car accident. So for that reason, he thought God was telling him to quit. But what was weird is he's now a religious man. And then he was telling me that he have made about $600,000 already. So he's well set for the rest of his life. And I told him, if you are religious, I will believe you only if you return the money back to the families, the kids that you killed. But he didn't want to do that. So it's really weird to understand them. You cannot even understand them. These are very illiterate, uneducated people that have no sense of remorse or humanity. For them, this was something that they enjoy actually doing. So, I mean, there is no logic in it. That's what I'm trying to say. And another thing that shocked me when I was there is, yeah, the race is the whole Egypt. I'm sorry to say that, but everywhere I went, I've seen like the system was more racist than the Bedouins actually. For the Bedouins, it was about money. For the Egyptian government, arresting children, young children, putting them, not even to give them in a dignified way, to bury them in a dignified way. When you put them in prison, that's not in a dignified way. When you deport them, they have to pay for their own flight ticket to be deported. But what was shocking to me is I met the children in the Sinai. When I asked what they want to become when they grow up, one of the children said he's going to get himself 15 Africans, torture them, and become a millionaire. This is how life was.
Thank you. Alors, une dernière question, et puis après on en aura terminé. Je crois qu'il y avait encore quelqu'un
Last question, and then we will end this discussion. There was in the back of the room somebody who already received a microphone.
Tout au fond, le monsieur, voilà.
In the back, this gentleman.
Au dernier rang.
I have a question for everybody, all the panelists. The amounts of money asked from the family are huge. So how do they organize to collect together this money in dollar? Is there some solidarity between the Eritreans who are in Europe and those who are in Africa? And then, do you know where the money goes? We know that the money goes to the torturers, but do you know if the money goes further even?
Thank you for this question, actually. A lot of people do not know. They think like the Bedouins, when I was there, what was funny is they thought Eritreans are the richest people on earth because Eritreans were the only people that were paying ransom. So I was explaining to them how the money was collected. So I would like to explain that as well right now. Most of the money of the ransom was paid from inside Eritrea, to your surprise, even though those that have relatives outside, whether it's United States, in Europe, or Australia, or elsewhere, was paying, but most of the money that was paid came from inside Eritrea. People had to sell their houses. Of course, there's a lot of solidarity. Here in Europe, I myself, my cousin was kidnapped. I had to pay $37,000, but most of the money came from friends. Of course, I had to borrow some money as well, but luckily, I was one of the lucky ones that received help without making it like a big issue. Not many people know about it. Very few people knew, but these people did help me. I want to share one story that really touches me most when it comes to collecting money. A 36-year-old priest was kidnapped in Sudan when, he'd been in the military for 18 years. He got fed up. He said, now it's time for me to go outside and have a life. So as soon as he crosses into Sudan, he gets kidnapped. The people that kidnapped him actually was the Sudanese soldier, which was collaborating with the kidnappers. So they told him they are going to take him to the refugee camp, but instead they called the kidnappers and then he was taken to Sinai. So when he got to Sinai, he was being asked $20,000. And this person, he comes from a very rural place in Eritrea, where his family do not even have a mobile phone. You have to call the neighbors, and then the neighbors will tell you, call back in 3 hours and we will have your family here. This is the kind of place that he comes from. His family owned probably about 5 sheep and few goats. This was all they had. So for that family to raise $20,000, it's something impossible. But because he was a well-respected priest in the area, the whole village sold everything they owned. And by the time they sold that money, they had only half of the money that was needed. So what they did is they had to go to the second village and started begging. His sister was asking, and then the second village had to sell everything they owned. And by that time, they had $19,500, $500 short. They sent the money to Sinai, and the Bedouins say, no, we asked for $20,000. This is $500 short. We need 500 more. So the sister went to the third village to collect money. By that time, I called to notify them that he had died because of the torture. So most of the money, to save one person, 3 villages that were poor got poorer, and they couldn't even save him. The story is how the money camp is always really sad, because we talk always about the torture. We never talk about what happens to the families that had to pay the ransom. For me, when my cousin was kidnapped, I had to listen when she was getting raped. I had to listen when she was getting tortured. And if I didn't listen, they would torture her more. They torture them more to talk on the phone. They torture them more so that they can terrorize you. So it's not only them, but the family gets, it was one of the most awful experiences that I had experienced that I never wish for anybody. Where does the money go? There's different kind of theories. Right now, just to clarify, where the kidnappers were in northern Sinai, near Rafah, right now they are organizing themselves and they are at war with the Egyptian military. And these people are calling themselves Egypt ISIS. They are not as big as the Libya one or the Syria one, but now these people. So sometimes I wonder, could this be the people that we were sending the money to? And then Americans believe the money was going to Hamas, which I don't know, because when you ask them how they came to that conclusion, they will tell you the people that were receiving money, most of the money was also, after they stopped sending the money to Eritrea, the money was paid in Israel. And the people that were, there are 11 cases, 11 people got arrested in Israel for receiving money, and all of them had Palestinian background, so the Americans tried to connect it with Hamas, which I don't know, I didn't study it, but there's all kind of theories. They could be terrorists or whatever they were.
Thank you, Meron. Merci. Écoutez, je crois qu'on a largement dépassé l'horaire qui était prévu, mais en même temps, évidemment, il n'y a pas d'horaire.
Went well over the time we had for this discussion, but it's a never-ending discussion. I would like to thank all the guests of my panel, Cécile, Allegra, Meron, Estafanos, Maurisse, Sheila, Keetharuth, and Abraham, Zere in Nebraska.
Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
En vous remerciant aussi, vous, de votre
Thank
présence,
you
de votre
warmly
écoute, de
for
votre
attending,
intérêt,
for
et
listening,
puis
and
je
for
sens un
your
peu mon rôle de
interest.
modérateur, mais voilà, je pense que
And
vous ne
I
pouvez que
get a
suivre les
bit
bons
out
conseils
of
de
my
Cécile,
role
et
of
ne pas rester
host
les bras
of this
croisés dans ce qui
panel.
se passe dans le monde
Please
autour de nous, parce que ce qui
follow
se passe dans le monde autour de nous nous concerne nous
the
aussi ici. On vous souhaite
ideas
une belle
of
soirée.
Cécile, and we have to commit for this cause. Thank you.